When I was first introduced to detailing, which I started driving in 1998. I was 17 when I got my license. So detailing, I think in the mid 90s, I guess I was always aware of it because growing up in the dealerships, that was the term that everybody used: car cleaning, car cleanup department, new car, whatever we called it. But I also think that detailing was more of a culture centered, at least in the car business. You think of like the old classic car guys. That mentality and that culture was just, it was a very much a subject that was talked about a lot. It was a term that was used. And then the outside world, so people that were not in the car industry in any kind of way, whether it be body shop, dealership, whatever. And there really were no detail shops, no independent detail shops. But people outside of the business didn't really know what detailing was. And we probably should have used a different term. Whenever I mentioned that I worked at a dealership, so I started working there in '99 at the Dodge dealership, and then I left in '04. Whenever I mentioned it, I think some people knew what I was talking about. They'd be like, "Oh, you put decals on cars, like the pinstripes." I don't know why the word detail was associated with pinstripes, like, because in the old days they used to paint them on, and then it became decals. And I don't really know why that is, because I've been in the car business so long, and I don't remember a time where I didn't know what detailing was. So it was interesting to me that people drew that conclusion. If we would have called it cleaning up a car, cleaning a car, washing a car, they would have understood. We used the word detail, and a lot of people just didn't know what it was. Like, very interesting. So I said all that to say exteriors was the main focus. I mean, you spent hours and hours and hours on the exterior because we're doing it twice. We're washing it or prep washing it, and then it gets polished, waxed, all that sort of thing. The interior was always secondary. And I think one of the main reasons interiors were secondary, it really didn't take as much skill, didn't take as much, the difficulty wasn't as high, there were less variables. And the reason is because you open a door of a car from of course, if it's 1999, we're doing a lot of 10-year-old cars. So then that means they're 89, and then we're doing some 79s and so on and so forth. And a lot of those vehicles were fabric. It's just carpet, 90% carpet. You open the door panel, the only non fabric was like the armrest, the handle to open the door, the crank, and like the mirror knob. That was it. Everything else was fabric, some sort of, whether it was a shag type of fabric or a kind of a more tightly woven fabric. It was fabric. So you vacuum, 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 and you could spend hours vacuuming, and then you wipe the dash down, and that was about it. And you did the windows. Maybe we put some protectant on the dash, but you know, that was kind of, it wasn't difficult. And as cars started to change in the early 2000s, of course, whenever we're detailing, we're not detailing new ones. When new cars come in, we rip the plastic off, we do the windows, we wash it, we shine the tires, it's out the door. There's nothing to detail. So whenever you're detailing something, you always think of 5 years old or older. So you're always working kind of in the past. So, fast forward 10 years, now we're working on cars being built in the 2000s or whatever. So there was less fabric, more plastic, leather, vinyl. And then again, another decade, same thing, more plastic, vinyl, leather, less fabric. Now there's almost no fabric in the car. Door panels are all plastic, mainly plastic and vinyl, same thing. Dashes are huge. Everything's kind of a lot softer. In the old days, you knock on it, it makes noise. Now, when you knock on it, it's like hitting a pillow. It makes no noise. And there's a lot more angles to things. There's some non-coated plastic in an interior, and then there's of course coated plastic like leather in the door panels. And then you got nav screens. They're big nav screens. Some, that's all it is, like a Tesla. It's just the nav screen, and that's it. And you have almost no fabric. So the difficulty level to do interiors is kind of, if in the old days it was very easy, and compared to now the interior levels compared to then, I mean, the difficulty level to do interiors now is exponentially higher. And it's not a difficult skill as in it takes like years of schooling or something. That's dumb. It's just difficulty in developing muscle memory. So that's really what detailing is. It's developing a certain muscle memory where you just know where you're going. You get to that spot. You know where the dirt is before you get it. You can almost see it without even looking. That's kind of the mindset. It's a muscle memory. It's just doing something without thinking. So the difficulty level of interiors has gone up, and I would say the difficulty of exteriors has gone down compared to the old days. You think cars from the 80s, cars from the 90s, they had a ton of material on, a ton of clear coat. It was about 100 microns, or you put two or three post-it notes together and then pinch them in your finger. That's how much clicker you had. Now you got about one post-it note. It's a lot softer. Now, as I think back to some of those old cars, every single car was just scratched to pieces, especially trucks or anything that sat around and got wiped or whatever, wiped down and cleaned that way. I think cars were so scratched back then. Of course, car washes probably weren't as prevalent. They probably weren't as popular. Cars were probably not going through. So where are these scratches coming from? Well, we used to use brushes, scratchy wool mitts. There was no such thing as soft, touchless, you know what I mean, gentle. This stuff didn't exist. It was basically like Brillo pad. We generate a lot of friction when you wash. I mean, you're pushing. Your triceps are going to be a little sore. The brush, your triceps from pushing the brush are going to be sore. You generate friction. You scrub it down. You use strong stuff. There was no car shampoo. I hate that term. So it was just very aggressive scrubbing. Clay bar wasn't really a thing. There was no such thing as paint safe chemicals. I mean, I'm sure there were. I don't remember all the stuff we used. The detail supply truck would drive by, and it would, here's the stuff. Well, it's for car. It's made for cars. I don't really know. They might have just relabeled Dawn or something. Who knows? But it worked, and we didn't have to be as picky. You know what I mean? Nowadays, there's 82 different soaps, 900 different all-purpose cleaners for interiors, 32 different polishes, compounds. And so everything back then was aggressive. So we aggressively washed it, and then we aggressively compounded it. We didn't call it some of these goofy terms that people use today, and it's fine. If you want to use those terms, I'd like to joke about certain terms and have fun with it and make fun of people. And, for example, someone calls me up and says, "Hey, can you shampoo my interior?" Oh, I say this is not a salon, so we don't do shampooing. And there really is nothing to shampoo. There's nothing to like clean in regards to the fabric's not even real. When you look at the floor mats or the carpet, it's plastic. It's like a laminate material. It's absorbent because of the everything liquid passes through and absorbs into the padding. But there really is, it's not fabric. It's a synthetic material. It's not even anywhere as good as like a house carpet, which I don't know if that's a fabric or true fabric or not. It's not. This is even fabric. This is like an athletic, moisture wicking. So, but it's a cotton. You know what I mean? It's not like that. Anyway, so we had to aggressively compound and polish because and you were grinding. You fired that rotary up. You cranked it on high, and you pushed with force. And those rotary machines were heavy, and they were tanks. They were a beast to deal with, and they took a lot of abuse, and we put them through the ringer. So all that to kind of say, today's cars don't like friction. They don't like aggressive. They don't like aggressive buffing. I like that term, or aggressive compounding. They don't mind as much the polishing, but you can kind of think of it this way. Polishing is less aggressive, but the aggressive range, it removes a lot of material. Now, sometimes that is called for. If I have a vehicle and someone's like, "Hey, I've got a 2024 Ram and it's scratched to pieces," and I think to myself, that's very unusual. It shouldn't be happening. And I will say, cars today are scratch less. Now, I'm not talking about those gouges. What people like will see, like paint missing, like oops, the kid hit the door with his bicycle handle, and the bicycle handle has like a metal edge, and it just literally dug into the metal. That's not a scratch. That's a gouge. And if you can see that, most likely you can. That's a gouge. It's not coming out. Things are missing. Metal is even penetrated to some extent. The scratches I'm talking about are the light ones from accidentally rubbing up against it, the automatic car wash, not washing car, washing too frequently, rubbing. They almost look like little silver hairs. You just take thousands of silver hairs and then just lay them all over the paint, and then they stick in place, and then they kind of sink into the clear coat. That's and you can kind of see them. They almost, when the light hits them, they kind of, since they're angles, since they're cut into the clear coat, it like V shapes, it creates the light and it bounces back and your eye picks it on. Like, see a lot of lights. Now, some people don't see that stuff, right? So what I'm trying to say is today compared to 20, 30 years ago, paint is way less scratched up, not gouges, way less scratched up than it was. There's also a whole lot less material. If you have 40 microns of clear coat and a 10 micron deep scratch, you got to take off 10 microns of clear coat. If you have a 5 micron deep scratch, you've got to take off 5 microns. Now, in the old days, if you had a 10 or 15 or 20 micron deep scratch, you had to take off that much quicker, but you had about 100 microns to deal with. So, a little bit different scenario. And since vehicles last longer than today than they did, we kind of have to think of long-term preservation. Now, if you're, there's so many different scenarios. Some people buy the used car and it already has the scratches on, it's 10 years old. Some people get a brand new car and they don't want it to get scratched, or it does have the scratches. There's just many different variables. There's no cookie cutter method. There's no single purpose response to all these issues. It's more custom, and because it can be so convoluted, and I don't like things to be convoluted, I try to make them as simple as possible. I'm generally going to price exterior detailing, exterior ceramic coatings to basically a singular price, because I just find it infuriating to me when I see prices on something and it's like, here's a base price. Oh, if we're going to add 2 hours of work, it's this much. Now we're going to add 4 hours of work, it's this much. Now we're going to 6. How do I know what I need? I'm not sure. If I went to the mechanic and they told me this convoluted menu of, hey, we're going to, go over your car, and if we find nothing wrong, it's going to be $100. But if we find X, Y, and Z wrong, it's going to be $650. And if we find A, B, C wrong, it's going to be $1,232. Can you just fix my car, please? Like, that's me. That's who I am, and that is who I'm trying to attract into my business. I don't mind having a conversation with anyone, but sometimes there are those customers, and that's fine. I can help point you in the right direction, that say stuff like, "Hey, my car needs a paint correction, and I need a 3-step paint correction." I don't know what that means. All I know is, when I look at your vehicle, I can look at it and say, hey, there's scratches on it. I'm going to do my best to get about half of them out. I'm going to be in the light to medium range aggression level. I'm going to be using a polish. Sometimes I do use a compound if I have to. I'm going to go as least aggressive method possible. And I'm going to get out about 50% of those scratches, which means I'm removing a decent. Now I'm not removing half of the clear coat there. 50% is, it's kind of it's a general term. It's not specific. It just means about half of what you see is going to be gone. The remaining last half that is still there, you probably will have a very difficult time finding even all of them, because there's going to be so much gloss. The light is not going to catch those scratches anymore. The light is going to be reflected off the paint in such a way that it's uniform. It's very intense, because the paint is being polished. and the gloss overall, because, think of it before it gets polished. The paint's dull, it's kind of dingy, it's dirty, and the light is going to catch those V-shaped scratches, and it's going to bounce off, send them to your eye. So when we polish it, we kind of we make the paint uniform. Not only that, it's what is it uniformly shiny. So your eye is going to have a harder time catching those individual, even if there's thousands of them on a given door. And it just kind of takes. Now, some people think, well, the shinier you make it, the more I'm going to see the scratches. No, it's absolutely the opposite. So if there's a potential for you to hardly see any of those remaining scratches, because I'd rather leave material behind and have some scratches than take off all the scratches and have not very much or a whole lot less material than I would like in terms of clear coat. And I get it. Everybody's different. Some people are like, I can't stand a single one of them. You got to get them all out. Well, then we'll have that conversation. There's going to be an additional charge, but that's going to be something I don't post that. Nothing like that's on the website, because when the person that I think that visits my website, the person that I think of the most that visits my website is, although this is not a main customer, who's the person that is going to look at my website and be like, I don't know what I'm looking at. What does this mean? I don't know what I need. I'm so confused. And then they might go to another guy's website, and it's even more confusing. So I want the least nerdy person, someone who doesn't watch a YouTube video, has no clue what any of these terms mean, goes on my website and goes interior detail 275, exterior basic detail 229, 504 total. Give me that. That's what I want. That's who the website's for. If somebody wants to have a super nerdy conversation, that's fine. We can have those conversations. But my website is for the uneducated person. The contrast between older vehicles, at least from my youth, and modern vehicles currently, and kind of the approach that I take to polishing paint and trying to strike a balance between improvement, making it look better. Because I agree, I think those scratches, especially when they quickly and easily catch your eye, they're very annoying. And you think, man, all this money I spent, I'm going to put a coating on it. I can't justify all this and still see them. We have to do something about it. I'm right there with you. I completely agree. And I'm trying to strike the balance between preservation and sort of improvement, or being bothered less by those scratches that kind of catch the light and catch your eye. So I want to strike that balance. I don't want to go heavy to one side or the other. I don't want to remove everything, but I also don't want to remove nothing, right? So each vehicle, thankfully, the vehicles I get, generally speaking, the paint is in good shape. If I was in the city and I had a lot of cars that came through here and they get driven through the car wash repeatedly, frequently twice, 3 times a week, we'd be having a different story. Cars in the city are just more scratched up. Out here, kind of more in the farm kind of area, more rolling hills, like Pigeon Hills type areas. People are, they either clean the car last or clean it at home. They're not running them through the car wash multiple times a week. So I'm not dealing with car after car that's just scratched to pieces. And if we were in the city, there'd be a lot more money. I'd be charging a lot more. And that's just not what my customers are looking for. If you are looking for that, we can absolutely have a conversation. Polishing paint is kind of more, if you're looking for that sort of, you have a lot of scratches and you need some aggressive compounding, it's more custom. It's more like, I don't know what the price is. I'm not even going to list anything. And generally speaking, I charge like $250 to do an additional. At most, it might be additional $500, because it doesn't take that much more effort to achieve the level that I want. I want to strike a boundary and say, I'm not this far and no farther. I don't want to go more aggressive than that. If you want to find somebody that remove your clear coat, more aggressively than I will, they're a dime a dozen. I'm sure those guys are really good. They might even consider themselves artists. I don't play those games anymore because paint is becoming more and more and more thin. And at the point at which I say I can't, if I continue down this path of aggressive polishing, I'm going to have to come to a point. I'm going to have to draw a hard line one day and say I can't do it anymore. And that's going to be very difficult, as opposed to a slow transition into something. That's way easier than just cold turkey. Cold turkey, no more paint, no more aggressive compounding. Sorry, I can't do it. Or I'm doing that $120,000 Tesla and I burn through some paint because it's just that thin and because it's scratched up. Now what am I going to do? Insurance claim, lots of money, spoiled reputation, damaged customer relationship. So it's not worth that in the long run. I appreciate you watching this video. This has been kind of good for me to have this conversation with you all. And by all means, I'm sure there's a lot of detailers and just you in general who are watching this are going to have a different opinion. And that's fine. I'm not going to argue with somebody if somebody wants to be super aggressive and remove 90% of the defects. I could do that as well. I would charge you a whole lot more than $250. I'd probably charge you like $750 each kind of additional aggressive level. I'm not willing to do that. Plus, it's so unknown how long it'll take. And then instead of being able to get your car back rather quickly, I'm going to now sit on it for a day and a half, 2 days, 3 days, and it's going to be hard for me to be profitable in that regard because I don't know. Okay, if I schedule something for the 17th, can I schedule for something for the 19th? Nope, still working on that car. I'm going to call that person, push it back. I'm only going to do 2 coatings that week or 3 coatings that week, and supposed to like 6, right? And I'm going to the more efficient I am, the better of a result I'm going to produce. The longer I take to do something, the worse result I produce. That's just the way I am. I've tried to spend a lot of time on a car, just doesn't work. I forget something, I miss something. I hurried up and got finished because it's been 2 days already. So appreciate you watching this video, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.